Hey guys, good morning. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast, back for another edition with an amazing guest. Let me introduce you to Mr. Brad Blue. He is a marketing leader at Logix Federal Credit Union who believes true leadership is built through integrity, hard work, and leading by example both at home and in the workplace. Passionate about personal and spiritual growth, Brad thrives on challenging assumptions, seeking deeper clarity, and helping others rethink what's possible. As a husband, father of two, and community minded leader, he brings a refreshing blend of thoughtful insight, authenticity, and purpose driven leadership. And with a perfectly timed dad joke always ready, Brad proves meaningful conversations can have both depth and humor. Brad, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Jason. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, super excited about it. We already have a few people out there watching. You and I met through the Ventura County Leadership Academy. We just graduated last night, so congratulations with our
You too.
cohort. And we got to learn a lot about our communities and the county as a whole. But even maybe more importantly, we learned more about each other. And I was excited to bring people from our cohort on our podcast, especially having you on the podcast. And I mentioned to you last night when we graduated. I've met a lot of people through the program, and I meet people in and out every day teaching martial arts, but very rarely do I meet someone who is as thoughtful as you are when it comes to like when I posted or something and you commented, like I can really feel how much time you took to think out what you wanted to say. And you're just such a cool guy, great guy, very thoughtful in conversation as well, very engaged. So I truly, truly appreciate that about you. And I can't wait to tell everybody a little bit more about you too.
Thanks a lot, Jason. And yeah, that is true. I'm glad you sense that. There's nothing in the world to me more painful than small talk, right? I want to I want to get down to the meat. I want to talk about real things. Because we only have however many days left of our lives, and there's so much to cover and so much to explore. So if somebody puts work into making a podcast like this, especially with some of my favorite people, I think that the comments you're referring to are from Sandra and Rachel. After those podcasts, I could have written a book there. There was so much I wanted to ask, so much I wanted to explore. But when you have interesting people around you, the least you can do for yourself as well as them is to just engage and find out more about them and learn more about the world and challenge your own perspectives, challenge theirs. So I was grateful to have the forum and grateful to have the chance to just have a good long conversation with you here.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And you're referring back to Rachel Jacobs, Sandra Jennings, who are other of our cohort members that I've had on the podcast. So guys, if you're watching live and you haven't seen those, go to Master Motivation Podcast on YouTube. Check out their episodes because they are amazing. And maybe, it might be really fun for us to have kind of a roundtable discussion with the three of you or maybe more cohort members all at once. So that's something that we can talk a little bit more in the future. But yeah, it wasn't just the comments on Facebook and on the videos. It was, we just finished graduating this amazing program. It was basically a 10-month program for us. We spent a lot of time learning all about everything Ventura County. But you wrote this truly beautiful kind of recap of what we went through, and it really didn't talk about what was happening in the county. We didn't talk about the companies that we visited and the CEOs that we met and the local leaders that we're rubbing elbows with. It was just about the experience of the people, and I think also Elizabeth commented how just beautifully
Yeah.
written it was. And so again, going back to that thoughtfulness of you taking the time to send that out to everybody, I know a lot of people really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks a lot. And I loved reading all the comments that came back from that. Believe it or not, I wrote that actually after the group went to Sacramento, but I couldn't quite figure out how to finish it. And I think it was
Mm.
because I was supposed to wait until then to post it. But yeah, I guess just as a summary of that, and as a pitch for anyone that's watching from Ventura County, really actually wherever you are, if you can find a leadership program, what I've found is that I guess I'm in a certain place in my life, in my career, where it's difficult to find peers. I love my team at work so much. I love my leadership. I love the people that I'm leading. But I think a lot of the people in VCLA, especially, are in this weird place in their career where I guess I'll say it feels a little bit lonely to me. I hope that's not an overshare, but or too emotive, but it feels a little bit lonely at the VP level because you're either reporting to someone or reporting sort of down down the ranks to other people. There's kind of nobody at your same level that's going through this with you. And one of my favorite things about the Leadership Academy was just going through something with people as peers, working on the same project together where we didn't have an official leader. Neither were we giving any instructions to anyone else to do anything. We were all just going through it together. And I think a lot of people become leaders because they're so good at being part of a team, right? An individual contributor. And eventually you're good enough at doing your job there that you make it to a leadership position. And I missed that. I missed that camaraderie of being in a team of contributors just doing something. So that was my best way of sharing that, and I'm glad it reached a lot of people in the right way. But VCLA certainly has meant a lot to me. It's been one of my favorite experiences ever, and I got to meet some incredibly cool people through it. I was watching your 30-second intro there and just thinking like, man, I'm talking kind of a badass. Like, like you've done some cool stuff, Jason. Like even the wrestling, like you're just such an interesting guy. I met so many interesting people through that, and I'm grateful for every minute of it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that as well. And it's interesting that you bring that up about the experience of feeling lonely-ish, or just kind of being surrounded more with peers again, because as leaders in our own industry or in our own careers, we're so used to kind of that day to day, like you said. I either hand down the instructions or the goals, or I'm following through with those. But this was truly kind of a team effort. And a couple people had asked me what my approach to VCLA was going to be. And I said, one of the things that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to take that big lead in doing really anything on my own. Just a couple examples would be, definitely Sandra, who stood out as someone that just took the reins, and Rachel, who's an organizer. Just people that like went out there and did it. And I don't know if that's how they normally are in their everyday life, but I know that that's how I am. And as soon as I enter, my business, of course, the Chamber of Commerce, like I just step into the go mode and the leader role. And my approach with VCLA was to be more of a team player, be more of in the background a little bit.
Mhm.
It's not usually like me to sit back, but I wanted to know what that felt like. And so understanding what you're saying about kind of being part of a team, and being with peers, with other leaders, it was nice to be led a little bit more in some ways for me, because I'm just so used to that other side. So I knew that we'd get to a lot of other things before we even started with the first question. We're 10 minutes in, and I want to remind anybody who is watching this live, please shout out those questions or any comments you have for Brad or myself, anything that you want us to talk about. We're also here for you and for the viewers. So let us know if there's anything you want to hear. But first question I want to talk about, Brad, is you said that leadership is more about example than titles or talking points. Where did that philosophy first come from for you?
Uh, well, I guess when you sent me that question, phrased the way it was, I thought, gosh, that's not very groundbreaking. That's not the most original thought. Is leadership is by example versus titles. And then I thought, the only people that thought is groundbreaking for are frankly the people that need to hear it the most, which are people that think that leadership does come because of their title. And I guess because of that, I can point to myself as a good example of somebody who has not been a good leader at different points in my past. And then I look to these different mentors that helped me understand, that weren't necessarily leaders by title, that were leaders for me, right? Different thought leaders, people that motivated me to do something that I wasn't otherwise going to do, people that motivated me to experience things that I might not have otherwise experienced. So I know the time that I'm referring to that I was a poor leader is in high school. I became the quarterback of my high school football team. And I guess I just assumed that, leadership was something to the side. I could throw a ball, I could run fast, all those things. And it didn't really occur to me how important just leading a team was. And because of that, the team never did have a dynamic. And I wish I had a great story at the end to say, oh yeah, my senior year, I finally learned how to be a leader. And, we closed out the season with all wins, but it wasn't like that at all. I don't think I understood until like my 30s what a poor leader I was for that team. Again, I was good at throwing a football, and running fast and all those things, but I wasn't leading by example. My attitude about things was definitely more to push blame versus to receive the blame and do something about it and inspire the team and all those things you want a leader to do. So I guess, the first thing is it doesn't matter how good you are at the thing. I think you mentioned in one of those podcasts I referred to that some of your best leaders that you've hired at the dojo are not necessarily the best martial artists, and conversely, some of the best martial artists are not great leaders. And so I think that's one thing that I realized probably too late, is that being good at the thing is not the same as being good at being a leader. You really have to focus on that leadership part if you want good results at the end.
Yeah. Well, wow. So number one, did not know that you were a quarterback and played football in high school. Did you ever play football after high school?
Recreationally, no. My high school football team went. Let's see, I was quarterback for my junior and senior years. I think we only won 2 games during that entire time. So
Okay.
there were definitely not many recruiters looking at me.
Gotcha.
But I certainly
Gotcha.
enjoyed it well into my 30s and even early 40s for sure.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, I actually had a chance to play flag football for a number of years, and probably one of the I had the most fun playing football, and I had been an athlete, pretty much my whole life. But I never played football in high school. I didn't play until I was an older adult. But playing football, a lot of fun. Um, you referred to some mentors and leaders that helped show you an example of what leadership really looks like. Because you're right. Yeah, you could be the best football player, be the best martial artist, and not be a great teacher. And you can be a great teacher and not necessarily have the most physical talent or be the best, but you understand leadership better. So tell me about the people that instilled leadership skills with you or showed you that example.
Sure. So I know I mentioned that they don't all have leadership titles. So the first 3 that I'll mention here by name, just because they deserve it when I'm here on a leadership show, would be Dave and John and AC from Logix. They've all just been really great mentors for me and showed me, what a leader looks like is someone who just genuinely cares about you, cares about your success. So those are people that are in actual leadership roles that have inspired me. There have also been several people from my church along the way that have inspired me. Uh, but but I mentioned earlier that it's not always the title or being officially made a leader that makes you a leader. And one thing I recognized early on, I used to lead the youth at a church in Colorado, and there were certain kids. Right, there's no titles among kids. They're just these middle schoolers and high schoolers that are going about life and doing it the best they can. There are
Mhm.
certain kids, even without being given the title, that just were leaders. And they weren't leaders because they were barking commands or anything. They were leaders because they were doing things that you wanted to get behind, and they were showing humility, and they were working harder, and they're putting in a lot of effort. And I think that's actually one of the things about being a leader is just effort, right? If you can see that somebody is working hard um, to get the group where the group wants to go, that's kind of your de facto leader, even without being given the title or anything like that. But yeah, so you learn a lot from kids, and that was an example from my life where I learned about leadership just from watching the kids um, that I was leading in the youth group.
Hmm. Yeah, you mentioned something about caring. Leaders care, and one of my favorite quotes is that people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care, and that's something that we see that works just so well with leadership is when I actually take a genuine interest in each individual as a person or in the team as a whole. And so tell me a little bit more about, the people that probably care most about you, which are your parents. What were
Mhm.
your parents like as leaders, or what did they teach you about leadership?
Wow, I love that question. Um, I I might get a little bit choked up here because I just lost my mom a year and a half ago from pancreatic cancer. But gosh, she truly demonstrated leadership, and I guess the most important thing about her is she did not want to be a leader. She just wanted to be a good person, and I'll say that about my dad too. And I don't think either one of them. I don't remember a single time ever growing up where they emphasized to me how important it is to be a good leader. Uh, they emphasized to me how important it is to be a good person, how important it is to work hard, how important it is to be passionate about things, how important it is to, there's a huge one, to try your hardest to see things from somebody else's point of view, which is absolutely critical for a leader. And somehow, through all of those things, I saw both of them lead people. My mom and her friend groups ended up just being kind of the de facto leader. She was the one getting everyone to do the thing, organizing everyone. And then my dad, through his career, had a lot of different instances where he just naturally became the leader. They were both teachers when I was growing up, but then my dad went on to perform in different shows in like Branson, Missouri, and then randomly became a Santa Claus for the last part of his career. But that's more of an aside. That's just an interesting Brad fact, is my dad is a Santa Claus.
Nice.
But they both led people just because of who they were, and I got to watch that. But again, neither one of them ever set out to be a leader, and I think one of the marks of a poor leader is sometimes, oddly enough, setting out to be a leader.
Mhm.
I think if your goal is just to lead people, but you kind of don't know why, it's then it becomes more of a personal thing, like puffing out your chest, like I lead people. And I think that leaders that want to be leaders, especially look at politics. If somebody sets out and they want to be a leader, those are often the worst leaders because the people reporting to them don't truly believe that that person has their best interests in mind. How about yours, Jason?
Yeah, thanks for asking. My mom was my mom led kind of quietly. My mom was not in the spotlight often. She was a stay-at-home mom, and but she instilled things very similar to what you had said, instilled things in us boys. And interestingly enough, all three of us, my youngest brother owns a martial arts school and is a great leader. My middle brother is he has his own construction company, so he's a leader in his industry. And then I opened a martial arts school, so all of us kind of did something that naturally, we became leaders, over time, and then owned our own businesses. And my mom always encouraged that, and always, I think what helped us the most develop into leaders was just always believing in us and always telling us, like, you can do whatever you set your heart to. Work hard. My dad was the perfect example of a hardworking guy. Um, I don't think that he ever set out to be a leader either, although he was a pitcher on his baseball team when he was a teenager. And the pitcher is typically, one of the leaders on the field.
Mhm. Yeah.
He owned his own company, and so he had to lead the jobs, but how he led was by his example. And I mean,
Mhm.
my dad didn't really tell you a whole lot about what he expected. He just showed it to you. And just like my dad could work, 16, 18 hours in a day, 100 miles an hour, nobody could keep up with him. And like you, my father just passed in January, and it was just his
Sorry.
birthday yesterday, so it was kind of a hard day actually.
Yeah.
But thinking back, those are the things that they didn't really tell me to be a leader necessarily. They just kind of showed me that way and had that belief in me, that eventually led to the confidence to stand up and not be afraid to be who I was, even though as kids and young adults, we're always afraid to be who we really want to be because we're trying to fit in and we're trying to do or say the right things. So yeah, I mean that's all. I think those are the ways that my parents kind of established that, and then looking a little bit more, I have two children, 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. And, I always just gave them opportunities to be in that leadership role. And it was kind of up to them to take it. Of course, now my daughter is the events manager at the Moore Park Chamber of Commerce. And she's kind of a program director. I say kind of because I haven't really given her that title, because I don't really believe in titles myself. Like I don't really love the titles. But she kind of, leads the show in the school, and my son's a lead instructor. And so, I just have always tried to provide that through, different opportunities.
I
So
really
yeah,
enjoyed meeting your family yesterday, by the way. And I didn't know that was such a tough day. That was a big day,
it,
graduating and then also your dad's birthday. And wow,
yeah,
you introduced another thing about how do you take that into being a dad yourself. And I follow you enough on social media, and also have heard you talk enough to know how important that is to you, and that's really important to me too. I don't necessarily, kind of like what we were saying before, I don't necessarily talk to my kids about how important it is to be a leader, but I talk to them about all those things I mentioned before, and sure enough, I'm loving to see them develop into leaders, especially um, my daughter right now. They're both crazy into Taekwondo, by the way, which I I
yep,
mentioned to you in
yep.
person. They're absolutely head over heels in love with Taekwondo and doing such a great job of it. But I've noticed that my daughter, just because of kind of who she is, keeps on being invited to lead the class. And they've both gotten into the actual leadership class at Taekwondo. And it's really neat to see their different personalities, getting an opportunity to be kind of put on a bullhorn,
Mhm.
and put in actual leadership environments, and seeing how they handle that. So that's been a really fun part of life lately.
Well, you're definitely striking a chord with me now, because if we start talking about martial arts and what martial arts does to help people to have the confidence and those leadership skills, I mean, it's learning how to lead by example. That's really what we're talking about, is leading by example, not leading by title. And I
Yeah.
will say that when I met your children yesterday, I was very excited to talk to them about martial arts, and we only had just kind of a couple quick minutes, but immediately I could see your daughter. As soon as we started talking about Taekwondo, she stood up a little bit taller. And when she
Yeah.
introduced herself to me, she looked me right in the eyes. She shook my hand. She used her voice very clearly. And I was like, wow, I love to see that, because we see so many children who have their head down, and
Mhm.
I don't want to put all the blame, but during COVID, when everybody was kind of stuck and isolated and kind of didn't have that interaction that we normally have, that changed kids growing up for sure.
For
I
sure.
saw it in my school. But to see her stand up like that was so super cool. And then your son's a little bit younger, and I could see that he's still got that little bit of shyness, but he still took the time to put his head up, stopped doing what he was doing. I think he had his iPad or something in his hand, or something maybe. But he looked up, and he said hi, and he talked with me a little bit, and I asked him questions. And we think that that's normal. But
Mhm.
actually, in most kids, it's quite the opposite. Very, very kind
Yeah.
of shy, reserved, and have a hard time. So I'm glad that they're loving Taekwondo. I know that was one of the first things that we struck a conversation about early on, was, and I wanted to, every time we had a session, I couldn't wait to ask you, how are they doing? And I'm glad that they've earned their first belt, and they're in the leadership program. So that's just amazing. Great,
Yeah,
great
for
stuff.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I think what was in my son's hand, the little Louisa things that we held up when she went and spoke,
Okay.
he thought that was pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just amazing kids, and yeah, both awesome leaders in their own right. Their mom is doing a really good job with them too. I'll have to shout her out here.
Oh,
Um,
well, 100%. And you know better than anybody else that having a strong partner and wife is what makes it happen. You know, we can't do this
Truly,
alone.
absolutely.
Well, let's jump into another question here. You know, in today's world, a lot of people are chasing influence. What do you believe actually makes someone worth following?
I love that we got to this question. I spent, which by the way is question number two. I love that we're half an hour in. I told you before the show we go off on a lot of tangents.
That's fine.
That's me. I love tangents. But this is my favorite question you sent me because, of course, when you hear the word influence and chasing influencers in today's society, you immediately go to influencer. And I thought, what is the difference between an influencer and a leader? And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier is when somebody sets out to be a leader, they often are not a very good leader. I think that somebody chasing influence has a lot of or even who has made it into the sort of the status of influencer has a lot in common with a leader in that a lot of people follow what they say, and they probably enjoy having that role. Uh, but I think the big difference, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this, is I think the big difference is responsibility. I think that an influencer is sort of there for themselves, right? Trying to meet their own goals. How many clicks can I get? How many likes can I get? How many products can I sell? And sort of the people following them are a byproduct of that. They're a necessary thing for an influencer to get the things that make them feel good. Whereas, at least in my experience being a leader, it's been a pretty sacrificial journey. I think that being a leader takes a lot of emotional investment and not always the good kind, right? Chewing on an email for half an hour before you send it. You're just kind of not at liberty to shoot from the hip. There's a lot of responsibility for the well-being of others that I think an influencer doesn't have. And so, yeah, I'm telling you, I spent a good hour and a half walk just thinking about that one question. I love that question, and I then started applying it to my own leadership. In what ways am I trying to be more of an influencer than a leader, and things like that. So, thank you for asking that very insightful question. I'm very curious about your answer to it.
Well, you know, one of the things that we teach in our leadership training program for our students at the school is we have a whole lesson on authority versus influence. And it's
Mm,
all, you know, it's all about, you know, don't tell me what you know, show me what you know. Don't tell me the way, show me the way. And it's just often that I'm reminding them that people are watching you. People are watching you all the time. And your integrity is kind of at stake sometimes when you're most vulnerable and you have to make these tough decisions, or you have to be in a certain situation and do the right thing even when no one is watching, you know. And so yeah, definitely, like you keep talking about people wanting to be a leader because they want the title, or they want the role, or they want the job, they want the pay. They want to be able to tell people what to do.
mhm.
But being a leader is so much more. It's showing the way. And also, I think it's when you're an influencer, you're actually influencing people to come up to your level versus pushing them down and keeping them below you.
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and so a lot of leaders, man, they're hanging on to their spot. You know, I mean, let's talk about football for a second, right? I mean, the guy that's the starting quarterback, that dude's got a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure because he knows that if he doesn't produce or play, there's someone waiting for his job. So he's like hanging on to that with everything he's got. And sometimes that could be a good thing. Sometimes that could be a bad thing because they'll do whatever it takes to keep that position. Um, but sorry, a little feedback. But in my instance here in the martial arts school, um, I don't want to be the one and only leader. I want to
Mhm.
have multiple leaders because I by myself can only impact so many people. But if we help grow more leaders that can work side by side with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I was thinking last night as everybody was talking about Patty, and Patty runs a program and she runs a tight ship and she does what she does. But
Patty
now,
Braga, we should mention Patty Braga is the leader of Ventura County Leadership Academy. An
yes,
amazing with that.
and she has created a program. Well, she didn't create the program, but she now facilitates the program that creates 40 new leaders in a different light, bringing those people up, right? And so I think when we talk about leader, influencer, or authority versus influence, I think that's what it's all about, is helping allow other people to rise rather than to hold other people down.
I love that, Jason. And it was not lost on me that we're talking about influence here on a podcast, but I think that just knowing you fairly well at this point, I don't see you at all chasing sort of the fame of things. And I love the one that you do with your wife as well. I think I can tell that you're just out there genuinely trying to help people and lift people up. I loved what you said earlier about just taking a back seat when you came to VCLA and letting other people shine and just experiencing what it's like to be led. And I think that actually, for what it's worth, makes one a better leader when they experience what it's like to be led as well. So yeah, I loved everything you said there.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for mentioning the show with my wife. And she's actually watching, and I'll put her comment up here. I think this was back a couple of minutes ago, just talking about leadership and authority versus influence. Agree. It's so true. Heavy as the crown, they say. And it can be, as a leader, there is a lot of, as you said, responsibility. You have a lot of responsibility. And I'm sure that your children's instructor will mention this to them, that one day they're going to earn their black belt, and everybody thinks that earning their black belt is like, oh, now you're at the top, you know and you've made it. And yes, it's a huge pinnacle in martial arts, and it's a huge milestone, and it's amazing. But you know what I tell my students is that it is so much harder to be a black belt than it is to earn a black belt. And so I could apply that to leadership. It's so much harder to be a leader than it is
Mhm.
to work your way to that position of being a leader, right? Because you've got all that responsibility. You've got the responsibility of everybody eyes on you. I mean, you did it. Okay, so what did they do to get there? How can I emulate them?
Mm.
And so, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that comment, Jackie. And thanks for bringing up our podcast. We love doing that podcast. It's just kind of a fun conversation for us every week. And, you know, whether it influences anybody else, I hope that it helps. The two people that it's most important to me is that our children get to watch this one day with their children and their children's children. And that will be a legacy piece that hopefully we can leave behind some sort of, I don't know, call it wisdom, call it experience, call it whatever you want, but it'll also be a way that they'll always be able to hear our voice. Because the one thing that I miss about my dad is his phone calls and hearing his voice. And luckily, I saved a bunch of voicemails that I can listen to quite often. But that's why we started the podcast. But let's go to another question. How about that? You talk about, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that it's also an awesome excuse to hang out with your wife, which is always, that time is fleeting. So I love that you figured out how to kill lots of birds with one stone with that. You get to hang out with your wife, and you get to do something that you love, and you get to leave something for your kids. I think that's pretty brilliant, actually. So well done to both of you.
We will make up any excuse or any reason that we can spend time together, whether it's doing that podcast right now, watching Sons of Anarchy, going out to breakfast or lunch. We enjoy it. So yeah, thank you. So Brad, you talk about breakthroughs that come from questioning deeply held beliefs. I love this, right? Because we talked about being troublemakers before. Was there a moment in your life where challenging your own thinking completely changed your perspective? And also talk about challenging other people's thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, so this one, I loved this question that you sent me as well. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I especially spent a lot of time thinking about it because it's a dangerous question. Because challenging your own beliefs really means challenging widely held beliefs and beliefs that people hold on to really, really strongly. And I could say the wrong thing right here, and a bunch of people wouldn't like me anymore, because I used to believe the same thing they believed, and now I believe something different. And I don't like that about the world, because one of my, I think, so my greatest value of all, above anything else, is humility. I love meeting somebody who is humble, and especially a person who shouldn't be humble and they still are. And when I meet, going back to my favorite leaders, they're all like that, right? Just really, really humble people, even though they have every right to not be. But going back to this question, humility, I think, necessarily means understanding that there have been some pretty dang smart people in this world, and there are currently some pretty dang smart people in this world, certainly smarter than myself, who believe completely different things from me, from each other. And I think it's, prideful, really, to establish yourself in one set of beliefs and just say, that's what I believe, and everybody else is wrong, And
Mm.
so I think, necessarily, when you're challenging beliefs, you're not challenging beliefs about, what's the best fast food restaurant, or, what's the best car brand. You're challenging beliefs about big, important things, right? Religion, politics, health, things that people feel very personally passionate about. So I thought long and hard about whether I should give examples, and I will say that throughout my life, I have changed my religion, uh, and come back and modified it throughout my life. I have changed my political beliefs multiple times, and still am doing that every day. And it's because when I hear something that doesn't quite match what I thought before from a really smart person, I think at the very least that deserves to be investigated. Or even if you have two conflicting thoughts that don't agree with one another, I think the lazy way out is to, say, well, everybody else like me believes the same thing. I think that it's incumbent upon each of us to challenge our own beliefs, by listening to others, to listening to ourselves, and by really just exploring every thought as something that could be changed with enough evidence. What do you think?
Well, I'm just thinking about, again, last night, talking about VCLA. You have so many people that come from different religions, different backgrounds, different political, and gosh, I mean, we don't have to go deep into this, and I think everybody watching can understand that we are in such a polarizing political climate that listen, when I was a kid, I never knew who my parents voted for. I never
Mhm.
knew if they were a Republican or Democrat. Didn't know. I knew what their values were and kind of went with that. And so, you know, I found myself listening a lot more lately to people that believe completely opposite of what I do, just to understand, right? Just to understand. Maybe I'm not going to change my mind. And God, let me tell you that a Facebook post is never going to change somebody's mind on politics, religion, or otherwise. Like I see the arguments on Facebook, and I'm just like, why?
Mhm.
Why? Like, I mean, a discussion is cool if we can do it face to face, but like an
Mhm.
argument online back and forth, it just, it's just kind of crazy. Those are my thoughts on it. But going back to humility, to
Mhm.
the people that I've met that were the most humble people I've ever met, Chuck Norris, who I think we all know who that
You
is.
met Chuck Norris?
I've met
We
him
need a
on
whole podcast episode on that.
I met
Ooh.
him three times. One time was very brief, and then two times were a little bit more conversation. As a matter of fact, I got to tell him because my instructor learned from Chuck Norris. That my instructor Dennis Ichikawa ran the Sherman Oaks Karate School for Chuck Norris. So I met him and I said, Mr. Ichikawa is here. We were in Las Vegas at a convention. He said, "Oh my gosh, Dennis," and he remembered him and he was asking me all kinds of questions. But I just watched how he interacted with every single person. We're talking about Chuck Norris. Like he is like probably one of the most famous people. And yet so humble, so interested. A friend of
Mhm.
mine often tells a story that he briefly met his wife and his family, and he was gonna watch him or kind of bodyguard, if you will, and ride with him. And he said, "Well, is your wife coming?" Called her by name, and he's like, "I can't believe he even like it was just briefly mentioned. He remembered my wife's name. Out of all the people he meets all day long and sees all day long." Anyway, there was just so much about him. And then Mike Dillard, who is the owner of Century Martial Arts, the largest wholesaler of martial arts supplies in the world. And I mean, I'm looking at these guys who have more money than I may ever have, very successful in their businesses and in their careers. Mike Dillard owns like half of Oklahoma, I think. But it's like you meet him, and number one, he's either wearing jeans or karate pants at his own humongous event in Las Vegas, right? Humongous $1 million event, and he's walking around either in karate pants or jeans. And this one struck me because I was very humbled. He had one of his employees or students reach out to me and say, "Hey, Mr. Dillard would like to work on some forms. Do you have some time during the day that you can come and work with him on your forms?" And I was like, "Me? You could have literally asked
Wow.
anybody else ever." So I got to actually work out with Mike Dillard and review some of our forms with him. And he was a student of Chuck Norris. He trained with Chuck Norris as well. So just like the fact that these guys are so super successful and
Mhm.
I mean humongous leaders, and but yet you talk to them and they're just like you've known them forever. They're just like super chill. Like I said, wearing jeans or karate pants, where like everybody else is like trying to posture up and peacock around wearing a suit or wearing their belt with their thumbs in their belt, that kind of thing. Just super, super funny. So yeah, I think humility is a very great quality of leaders and leadership, and just understanding, like you said, um, when it comes to empathy, we do empathy training for our black belt students getting ready to test for black belt. They have to live one day in a wheelchair, one day blind, and one day mute, just to understand. And it's seek first to understand,
Mhm.
that whole concept. I think that that's so super important, and that is lost. I lately I've really loved hearing specifically the other side of the coin, just so I can maybe not question my beliefs,
Mhm.
but just like I said, just to understand that there is another side. And I'm not here to change anybody's mind. Like if this is what you believe, man, I'm not gonna shame you for it. I may not
Mhm.
agree with you. I'm not gonna
Sure.
side with you, but like, cool. You're a person, you have your own beliefs and your own passion, good for you.
For sure. Uh, Gosh, there's so much I want to say about that. First of all, the idea of having the students go through a day living in somebody else's shoes like that is really just powerful and beautiful. Where did you come up with that idea?
Actually, it was another organization was using this as part of their black belt requirements, and I was just looking for something that, because again, we could talk about martial arts the whole podcast, but it's not about that. But there's so much that we teach in martial arts that isn't about the kicking and punching, and I just thought, like you said, it was a beautiful way for people to understand, because like, man, like we're so blessed, to be able to do martial arts at all. There's some kids that are in a wheelchair that don't get to do martial arts. Although I've tried to teach several students in wheelchairs, and often it's the parents think, well, they can't do that, and I'm like, yes, they can. Just give me a
Mhm.
chance, let them try. But all these other things, being able to have sight. I mean, could you imagine going through life and never seeing all the beautiful things that we see, not being able to communicate the way we communicate? So I just thought it was a powerful lesson. We also have our students complete 100 acts, random acts of kindness over time. and
Mhm.
just trying to teach those life skills that it's more than the punching and kicking. These are the things that I think make us a better leader.
That is incredible, man. I used to have a whole show just having the people talk about their experiences doing that. And I suspect something else comes from that as well. Not only realizing how difficult the world can be when you're walking in somebody else's shoes, but also how beautiful it can be. I know just from my own experience of being deprived of a sense for a very short amount of time. Say when I fast, for example, when I come out of the fast, the way food tastes after
Mm,
not tasting it for a while. When your senses become heightened like that, you sort of realize how beautiful things that you consider normal really are. So I love that you do that, Jason. That's so cool. The other thing I wanted to say is I implore you, I know the internet is awful. I know social media is awful, but don't give up on social media. The key is don't argue, but have a conversation, just like we're having right now. Have conversations with people because I assure you, you can change people's minds, and your own mind, far more importantly, can be changed. I'll give a super, super random example. Is Back when Disney was considering changing the Pirates of the Caribbean ride to remove the one scene where the men were chasing the women
yep.
to abduct them or whatever it was. I thought, gosh, that's foolish. That is absolutely ludicrous that somebody cares about that. Come on, it's Disney. We all grew up with it. And I was on some sort of forum. I don't even know how I ended up there, to be honest, but I was on that forum reading through the arguments. And through the arguments there, I thought, you know what? Like, I don't think I do want my son looking at that. And not that I think that he would become like that, but I didn't think that it needed to be something that reminded people of awful things when you're there at Disney. I won't go through the whole experience with that, but I got to the end and I thought, I'll be darned, an internet argument changed my mind. So don't give up on it. I think if there are truths out there, uh, then the internet is a way that we have to communicate about them, just like we're doing right here.
Well, and I agree with that. I love that. I love having the ability to have this conversation right now, and you and I don't have to be in the same room. During as horrible as COVID was in so many ways, a lot of good things came out of it. We learned how to teach martial arts on Zoom. I started doing more Zoom meetings. I created this podcast based on not having the ability to communicate like I normally would. So it definitely helped me to connect. And I don't think that social media is awful. I think that the things that happen on social media sometimes can be
Mm,
awful. I think social
yeah.
media can be used. We talk about influence and we talk about leadership. I think we have such an amazing opportunity using social media. That's where the whole master motivation, my motivation Mondays, it all comes from that because it's like when I wanted to start this podcast, I said to myself, all I'm reading about is how awful COVID is and how lonely people are and blah, blah, blah. It was like total doom and gloom. And I said, there needs to be something a little bit more positive. And I was like, what if I interview leaders that talk about the positive things in life and all the great things, and it spawned from there. My wife and I created a Facebook group based on that same concept. We saw a business get kind of ripped to shreds on Facebook, and you know how damaging
Mhm.
that could be to a small
Yeah.
business, especially.
Mhm.
And we said there needs to be a place on Facebook where people can go and promote businesses. So we created a group. Now it's Moore Park Community Connections, to where talk about all the businesses in Moore Park, talk about the places that you love and do good. So I am, I don't think that social media is awful. I think that social media can be used for very, very good. And back to what you said about fasting, which by the way, I'm kind of in a little mini fast right now because I'm trying to cut weight for a fight coming up. But when my wife got out of the hospital uh, in 2024, um, the first thing that she noticed, and
Mhm.
she looked outside because we had been in the hospital room for many, many months. She walks out of the hospital room and she said, "It's so beautiful outside." And I thought to
Mhm.
myself, I mean, we walk outside every day. There's a blue sky and there's birds and trees and all. And she just looked around, and it was to watch her face see that. I
Mhm.
literally like that brought me to tears just to see that because it's like, oh my gosh, she's not seen this for so long. So going back to the empathy training and how important that is, I think that is it's a good exercise. It's a good exercise. Well,
No
let's
question.
wow, people are jumping back on. Guys, if you're watching live, I know we've had some people on here almost this whole hour, but we haven't heard from you. So if you have any questions, any thoughts, any comments for Brad or I, please post those. But let's see if we can get one more question in because
Sure.
we're on number 4, but we're not going to get to number 10 today. Um,
No.
how has being a husband and a father shaped the way you lead professionally and personally?
Another awesome question. It's been the best leadership experience of my life. Uh, I didn't, when I first got married, I didn't understand sort of what leadership really entailed. And of course, there's almost a stigma around sort of the man being the leader in general. So it feels somewhat even awkward to talk about that in terms of leader, but I never thought of it as one person being a leader and one person being, submissive to that leader so much as you both just think the other person is so incredibly important uh, that that it just kind of comes naturally, and so that's been one way that's influenced the way that I live the rest of my life is just if you if you consider yourself a leader, not in what am I trying to accomplish, but what are we trying to accomplish? How much can I um, how can I love this person so much, whether it's my wife or my kids or even just somebody that I'm leading? How can I love this person so much and want something good for them so much that I make a decision that is good for everyone and will be beneficial to them. So I think that's been one way. Another another way is just realizing how important leadership is in the first place. Uh, when you are leading a team or a church youth group or something, I guess the consequences of a failure in leadership are they're there certainly. I mean, you might lose your job, but they don't have the kind of repercussions as if you see something go wayward with your family and realize that you've done harm. So just realizing that the important, just the weight of leadership, like your wife said, heavy lies the crown. Uh, the incredible weight of leadership hit me when I became a husband, and certainly when I became a father, even more so. Uh, and, and a lot of people say, well, it put it in perspective, put work in perspective, and I think that's true. But I think other people are saying it like it made my perspective that leadership at work is less important. I should be focusing more on my family. For me, that didn't happen at all. It like the rising tide of leadership raised all ships. I realized just in general how important it is to be someone's leader, whether you asked for that or not. When you're in the role of being a leader, it's vitally important that you care deeply about that and that you put everything you have into it.
Yeah, bec becoming a husband and then becoming a father, in many ways, so I was so excited. I wanted to get married like long before I think my wife was ready. We were still in school, and she told me, we're not getting married until I finish school. And I said, okay, obviously I'm waiting, but I was so excited. But then also at the same time, like, oh shit, like I have to, I mean, I have a daughter, so I definitely think even more so about this now that like, and John, if you're listening, know this about Maddie. I want someone who, even though I know my daughter can take care of herself, and I know that
Mhm.
my wife could have taken care of herself, but I felt this responsibility, and I learned this through my father that the man of the house, the husband, it's your job to be the protector, and it's your job to
Yeah,
be the provider.
right,
I mean, that's just how it's been since the beginning of time. This is
right,
not a new concept, right? And
right.
this is just the role we play. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't be a team because my wife and I are absolutely a team in every sense of that word. And, but I was excited, but I was scared to death because what if I screw up? I
Yeah.
still worry about that. What if
Mhm.
I make a mistake that impacts my family negatively? You know, being a father, what if I make the wrong, I made so many mistakes. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, I made a lot of mistakes, and I hope that they learn from those mistakes. And I think that's another thing about a leader is being able to admit that you've made a mistake, and kind of like let my example of my mistake be a lesson to you.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
you know, having kids, it was exciting, but it scared the hell out of me because I just don't ever want them to hurt or be without or struggle. Although, you know, with our kids, you know, we have to let them make their own mistakes sometimes. We have to let them fall. You know, I was not really that dad that like every time they fell down, I picked them up and, oh my gosh, are you okay? I was quite the opposite in that regard. But in certain things, like, you know, I don't want to see them fail and I don't want to see them hurt, but they kind of have to feel that to gain their own experience and to gain that own experience. Because even though I've experienced it and I've gone through it and I could tell them about it, but I can't really show them about it because I'm kind of past that phase in their life. They have to kind of learn it on their own. So yeah, I mean, you know, being a husband, being a father, a huge part of our leadership, I think, comes from that. And it's changed my business. I mean, a million percent. You know,
Yeah.
having my own kids go through my
Mhm.
program. Oh my gosh, I was a drill sergeant as an instructor. And then now that my daughter starts taking class at like 2.5, like I couldn't be the same way I was before because like this is my
Sure.
kid, you know, like so I learned a lot. Hey, we got a comment up here. Let's throw this up here. This is Chance, I think. Brad's desire to put everyone and everything above himself and see them succeed at all costs is what makes him the epitome of a leader personally and professionally. And Brad, I've known you, you know, for a short amount of time, probably compared to this person, and most people in your life. But I already know that about you. I know because you keep asking me questions on my own podcast, and this podcast is supposed to be about you. So thank you for that comment, Chance. And do you want to respond to that, Brad?
Well, you know, a best friend is sort of required to say stuff like that.
Okay, all
But
right.
yeah, Chance has been my best friend ever since middle school, sixth grade,
Wow.
and he's seen me go through a lot of this journey, and I've gotten to see him go through a lot of this journey as well, including recently become the leader of his own family and having a beautiful little daughter. So thanks so much for that comment, Chance. That means a lot to me, and so does your friendship.
That's awesome. Isn't it cool to have friends? Like a lot of
Yeah.
people don't still have friends from like middle school and,
Yeah.
and even grade school. But fortunately I have a couple that are still. As a matter of fact, one of my friends just texted me this morning that I've known since we were 10 years old. You know, so it's nice to have friends like that. So, but being a good friend doesn't mean he has to say that. I think that he definitely meant that. So thanks again, Chance, for tuning in. Guys, again, any other questions or comments? Because we're going to start wrapping up in the next couple of minutes here. Um, let me see, because we still have like a bunch of questions, but I want to pick. Okay, I got to pick this one because this was kind of in your bio. You balance thoughtful insight with humor and dad jokes. How important do you think humor is when it comes to leadership, relationships, and connecting with people?
You know, that's such a personal thing. I for me, it's like the most important thing to relate with people that way. But that's not the same for everyone. Like, I'll actually give a funny example when it comes to you. When I realized I was coming on your podcast, I was like, "Oh, that's funny. It's like the Blue Flame podcast." Like, but like that's my weird value is just humor and making a dad joke about everything because that's the way I relate with everyone.
Mhm.
Uh, but you know, I don't think that everyone has to relate like that. And um, I think that one important part of leadership is realizing that like my team doesn't all like my dad jokes, you know, and and that's okay. I don't need them to like that part of me in order to want to go in the same direction that I'm leading them. And conversely, right, if they don't communicate like that, I don't need to expect that of them or even of my own leaders in order to recognize their leadership authority, and it really has more to do. If you can just convince me that you like me and you care about me and you want what's good for me, I don't care if you're funny or not, but it certainly for me makes it a heck of a lot easier if you can cut some of the very serious times with a well-timed bad joke, which Chance also knows very well.
All right, Chance, drop your best dad joke. I was thinking humor makes us human, and it takes that, that title that I often have team meetings where I'll just drop a joke, and I don't know if it's a dad joke or not, but I just try to joke because I just want to like break the even I'll share this. This is funny because as we were in the beginning of the podcast, my wife sent me a text and she said, what'd she say? She said, "Relax your face." And I'm like, thanks. Like, what's wrong with my face right now? But sometimes you gotta do that because like right now we're laughing a little bit and there's some some animation going on, and it just lightens the mood. Like everything, there's definitely times for seriousness, but in team meetings I'll often drop a joke just to lighten the mood a little bit because I don't want everybody like on eggshells or pins and needles, and like I want people to be ready to contribute and engage and be activated, not just so like frozen, and I think that's that's what your dad jokes do, is it kind of instead of having people on edge, lets them breathe a little bit, and so like I said, I think humor makes us human, and that's the most important thing is we're all human.
Wow. Yes, for sure. And I love that comment from your wife because I was worried about your face. No, that's
Thanks, Brad.
amazing.
You could have told me. It's why I have the nice green trees behind me, so there's at least something
Right.
pretty to look at. Well, Brad, this has been an amazing conversation. I hope that everybody else has enjoyed it. But if you're not watching, you missed out. And if you see it later, I hope that you go back to the beginning and watch it. But I have truly enjoyed it. Thank you, Chance, and thank you, Jackie, for your comments. I'm pretty sure that we had some VCLA cohort members out there watching. So thank you to you guys. Please just like, comment, and share this video wherever you can, and go to Master Motivation Podcast and subscribe to the channel for some more upcoming shows. But Brad, I want to turn it back to you just to kind of close real quick with any final thoughts.
My final thought is thank you so much for putting this thing together, Jason. I've been so enjoying it, watching my fellow cohort members come on here and listening to what they have to say. The 10 months I had with everyone just wasn't enough, honestly. I want to get to know everyone better, and all of your other guests, now that I know this podcast is here. Really looking forward to hearing what you have to say and what they have to say. So thanks for letting me be a part of that. I'm humbled and just grateful to have the opportunity to have another really good conversation with you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I totally enjoyed it. And I think that I'm going to put this on my schedule to reach out to some more of the cohort to get us on kind of a roundtable topic, and we can continue to engage that way. I know that we're going to see each other on Saturday, and the cohort's got a bunch of plans for us, maybe to stay in touch over the rest of our life, I guess. So yeah, let's just see how that goes. But Brad, I really appreciate you. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. You obviously went and took these questions very seriously and put some thought into each one of them, and I appreciate all your answers. I'd love to get the answer to the rest of the questions at some point, so I'm sure that we will be talking again very soon.
Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching Master Motivation Podcast with Brad Blue today. We'll see you on the next edition. Stay tuned and have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.